Hello, and welcome to the AskEzra podcast, real people with intimacy challenges and real intimacy coaching. I'm Sir Ezra Algos, intimacy coach at AskEzra.info. If this is your first episode, you might be asking yourself, what is intimacy coaching? One definition is that an intimacy coach helps people feel safer, closer, and more connected to their lovers, friends, and even themselves. It is my goal to help people become closer to the people that they care about. So join me for this session already in progress.
So I came at this from the approach of, I want to learn the language and the etiquette of the appropriate way to approach a BDSM relationship. And I tend to look at things like, let's not make too many mistakes if we can avoid them, which is why I sought you out. Having watched you do an interview on Sanctuary's Zooms in the middle of the pandemic, it was my first introduction to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, this guy's got his act together, at least at that point. And then I met you in person and I was like, oh, there's a chemistry here. So there was an initial, like, I trust this guy. And then when I looked at your book, Mindfully, and read the book, it was like, okay, this guy actually has, he might not know everything, but he knows more than I do, and certainly is in a position to teach me a lot. So I come from a world that's had a lot of trauma in it, and I don't want to perpetrate trauma on other people.
Yeah.
And I know that this is an environment where if you say the wrong thing, if you step the wrong way, you can hurt people. So I wanted to minimize that risk as much as possible.
Yeah, you can hurt people, and you can also damage your reputation like really quickly and eliminate a lot of good opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would imagine so. And so for me, it was, okay, there's my own just resistance to relationships and getting vulnerable, like sort of as a man in America, as a gay man in America. It's sort of like, okay, how vulnerable do I want to get with another guy it's weird. We have a thing where it's like, it's hard to get vulnerable with somebody that you don't know. And then once you know them, it's hard to get vulnerable with them because you don't want to risk the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But because we had a professional relationship and I had that underlying feeling of trust with you, I didn't have as hard a time getting vulnerable with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what I try to do is to create like a container, create a safe space where it's okay to experiment. And, right. So practicing being vulnerable with me is absolutely the point.
And it definitely has been a huge benefit to me. I've experienced that in a relationship that I'm pursuing. I don't know what the heck. Relationships are messy. I mean, it's like I live in the world of messy relationships, but this one seems messy and normal. But you've actually helped me navigate that by giving me a language and skills of when we would meet, we'd do some role play, and I would immediately get all flushed and uncomfortable and start stammering, but we'd work through it. And then it's like, okay, so now I know how to do this. It's rehearsal.
So I love that for two reasons. Okay. For one, I'm a sadist and I love to watch you squirm. It brings me joy.
You're good at making it happen. So,
but for the other reason is like, I think with some people, it can be kind of unclear when we're hitting the right buttons. And with you, David, you're never shy at expressing that discomfort. And I feel like when we hit that discomfort, I know we're hitting the right buttons. I know we're okay. This is the work, right?
Right.
Because it wouldn't be uncomfortable if it wasn't the right situation.
But it's discomfort with the safety net.
Yeah, growing pain.
I have to worry about like, oh, am I going to say something that's going to like annoy him or shock him or piss him off? It's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, and you might, but our relationship's not vulnerable to that. Like you're allowed to piss me off or annoy me, and it's not like you're not going to suffer the consequences of that you might in a normal social situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was one of the big benefits of working with you, and one of the reasons why I chose to work with you. Plus I think the fact that you have the experience in the community and you're respected in the community were other big factors for me. I didn't want just, let's go on FetLife and find the guy that looks the part, but doesn't have a lot of the background.
Hey everybody, it's Ezra. And wow, isn't that exciting? Wouldn't you like to be the next guest on our show? Well, you can. Just email AskEzra8@gmail.com. And hey, if being on the show is too much and you'd just like to get some private intimacy coaching, that's available too. Now back to our show. There's a history of mentorship in the BDSM community, and it comes from the leather community. That's why I fly my leather flag, right? It comes from mentorship in the leather community, and it almost follows the methods that the Greeks used, where like a sexual relationship and mentorship were inseparable, right? And so in sort of the old world of leather, a daddy would take on a boy and mentor them until they were ready to be a daddy or a master themselves, right? Or daddy boy or master slave, sort of two different ranges of that power exchange. But the same thing would happen where you really had to learn from the bottom. And I think what has happened is when leather became more accepting of everybody, that's where BDSM sort of came from. And because it grew in popularity, we couldn't vet people as well. And all of a sudden, like, abuse was more prevalent. And so the sexual relationship that is a mentorship has a vulnerability to abuse, right? It isn't necessarily abusive, but if somebody's, if you have a sexual relationship with somebody and they're helping you grow, they may like keep you from growing to a place where you're no longer of use to them sexually, or like push you into growing into a way that they would prefer sexually. And so those are very subtle forms of abuse. And there's more gross ways to do it too, but that's kind of why that doesn't happen anymore. And so there's this weird vacuum, and education is filling that in terms of like, classes. People can go and watch classes, people can go read books now, and this is like filling that in. But I think that there's still a really strong need for mentorship for a lot of people, and a lot of a need for guidance. And I think that those are institutions we still need to support in the BDSM community. And so part of what I've been able to offer is essentially like a mentor for hire. And so I think we do something that's almost like it's more sex coaching than life coaching, but it's also kind of life coaching. And it's also kind of that mentorship that, that might have existed before as well.
And I don't even know that it's sex. I mean, sex coaching seems kind of almost like it's limited, because the reality is it's relationship coaching that is done through the lens of, with the sexual tint to it. A lot of times it's like, one of the first things you told me was how you set boundaries. Like, here's what I expect. And the reason why is because if I don't let you know what my expectations are, I can't then hold you accountable. And I'm like, that's, I have done that in my professional life with greater and lesser accuracy. And when you put such a fine point on it, it was much easier for me to actually become more consistent in doing that professionally.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, right. Because you shine a light on something that isn't really related to my sexual relationship life at all, but it's going to help me in both my relationships, sexual and professional.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely, I mean, you could call this whole thing relationship coaching. But we also work on the relationship you have with yourself, right? Right. And I think it's important to state those expectations at the onset of a relationship, but it's also important to be open to like rehashing those. Like, I remember we had a conversation where there was a break in our work together, and I could have been invulnerable in my saying, hey, we need to stick to a schedule. It's not acceptable for you to deviate from that schedule, right? And that would have communicated a message and you wouldn't really understand what my needs are in that situation. But instead I said, hey, David, like our work is important to me. And I didn't know if I had pushed you too hard. I didn't know if something had happened to you, right? If you need a break, if you need some time, you tell me, that's fine. If you want to quit working with me, I'd appreciate you letting me know. You're certainly not obligated to let me know, but that's what I would like. And so by being vulnerable, by saying, hey, here's what are my needs, like I'm encouraging you to do the same. I'm modeling. I mean, how silly would it be as your intimacy coach to be avoiding intimacy, right?
And yet it wouldn't surprise me if
It
there's
happens.
people out there that do it, because we all have those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. And nobody's perfect, and nobody should be expected to be perfect. Hey, everybody, it's Ezra. Do some of these challenges sound like some of the things you've been dealing with? Maybe your challenges are very different, but you just love to have somebody to work on them with. Well, you're not alone on your journey. I'm here to help. So email AskEzra8@gmail.com or visit us at AskEzra.info, and maybe we can set up a session where we just focus on you. All right, back to the last component of our show. From all the things we've been working on, what do you think has been like the most impactful?
I think our role play has really helped me a lot. You playing the role of interviewee, I guess, or like on a date was really helpful in terms of like how to approach this stuff in a way that I hadn't thought about before. So it gave me a skill set of how to hold space for other people and how to like vet other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those were two really important things, because I think so often it's like when I look back on my history, it's like I ignored red flags. The bull was charging right at me and I was like waving the red flag. It's like, no, don't do that. So that was really impactful. You pushed me once to go to a bar, and that was just it was a very uncomfortable thing for me to do, but it also confirmed for me like where I need to be and where I don't need to be.
Yeah.
And that was a really big thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see that was a really uncomfortable situation. And, as an intimacy coach, I'm going to make suggestions. I do my best to not tell you what to do. The inner dom in me is always like, David, this is what you need to do. Yes. Right. But that's not appropriate, right? I'm not hired to be your dom. I'm hired to be your coach. And so what I want to say is, hey, we have these things, right? We have these options. And I think this is a good option. Right. And so, maybe in that setting, I was like, hey, this is where we need to be. Let's go and let's do that. Right. But honestly, not every suggestion is going to be a hit. Right. Not every solution is going to work. But what I can do is provide a lot of solutions. And I think for a lot of gay men, the bar scene is a great way to connect and to network, but that isn't the right place for you, for sure.
But there was something good that came out of that, was by feeling the discomfort and then by actually looking at it, processing it, discussing it with you and some other people. It was like I became much clearer on where I do belong and where I don't belong. And so I could let go of that voice in my head that's like, you need to be there, you need to be there, you need to be there, which on some level is beating myself up because I don't really need to be there.
Yeah, you don't. You really don't.
It's
yeah.
reality.
Yeah, that's just one option.
Like, so there was a release of something that I was using to like beat myself up with.
Yeah, and we don't need that. We don't need right. We don't need any more ways to beat ourselves up.
No, that's what floggers are for.
Yeah, but I love role play. That is, they say there's sort of like 3 modes of sexual interaction, right? Mm-hmm. There's partner connection, there's trance, and there's role play. And the way to think about it is like, are we making like deep eye contact? Like that's the partner connection. Are you like closing your eyes and focusing on your body? Like that's the trance. And then, are we wearing funny hats? And that's the role play. And let me tell you, I have had a captain hat since I was 16. I was doctor. I was captain. I think I was professor a few times.
Why does that not surprise me?
But no, so I think role play is super powerful because it gives us permission to just try things on, right?
Right.
And I think there's like longer term role play where we're like, we've had whole sessions where we're like, okay, we're on a date. I'm evaluating you. Let's go. And that's then like lasts the whole session. And I tend to break character because I want to be there for you as the coach and like interrupt myself, right? But then there's also like a super short term, like let's practice saying no, right? Or let's practice making a proposition. And yeah, my favorite one is is making propositions, because everybody gets uncomfortable making propositions, especially when you go like, no.
Yes, exactly.
But I like to do it. You explained it ahead of time, or conditional ask with explanation, right? So you don't explain it ahead of time, but you create a condition for that thing to happen. You make a proposition, and then you explain why you want that thing to happen, and that tends to yield better results. And I feel like when we go into it feeling armed, like when we have like the ammunition for doing well, then we can feel more confident. And honestly, the confidence makes the most difference, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's the stuff that I think like we don't learn well. I mean, I know from my own experience, like there wasn't a lot of dating experience, so there wasn't a lot of hitting on people. So having that sort of like practice it role play was really beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. Was there any particular role play? I know we've done a lot of different, role plays. Was one that like sticks out in your mind?
I think the last one we did where it was like dating interview, like first date kind of thing, was really beneficial because it was asking questions to discover, but not interrogating.
Yeah.
Like I didn't walk away feeling like, oh, I've now told my life story and he knows my first dog was named Cindy. It's like, I never want to do that again because that's a horrible experience that everybody hates.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no. And yeah, if dating feels like it sucks, like either you're doing it wrong or you're doing it with the wrong person, right? Like dating should be a friend finding endeavor, and like you can find friends dating if you're doing it right. You should be having fun, because if you're having a lousy time, then you're only showing somebody your lousy self, right? You're not
Totally.
Totally. So I what was my favorite question was, you know, you're walking in the desert and you come across a tortoise and you kick it over. It's on its back. It's baking in the sun. It can't flip itself over. You don't help it. Why don't you help it, David?
That's such a sadistic question.
And that was the what is the name of it? It's a Turing test in reality, but there was a name of it, the Blade Runner, the Void Kampf test, I think. Yeah, no, that's one of my favorite movies. And so it was an excuse to both make you visibly uncomfortable and mention that that's my favorite movie. Thanks for watching the Ask Ezra podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends on social media. If you would like to review this episode, please do so at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support the episode, go to patreon.com/AskEzra, and you can sign up for our mailing list at AskEzra8@gmail.com. Lastly, if you'd like to find out if intimacy coaching is right for you, visit AskEzra.info. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to tune in next time.